So welcome once again to my session Python programming. I, Sanjay Mathapati, Assistant Professor, ISMR MCA Department, take this opportunity to explain this today's topic. Okay, today we'll be discussing about Python database interaction, and preferably in database interaction we will will handle or deal with the NoSQL databases than that of the regular relational database management systems. Okay, so let's go through the sessions, and if you have any doubts, just please make a note of that, and at the end of the session we will have the question answer session. Okay, at that time you may ask the questions. So the contents of the today's session, or rather than I may say the entire topic, entire unit contains the introduction to NoSQL database. Okay, means why, what exactly NoSQL means, then advantages of the NoSQL database, then SQL as well as NoSQL database advantages, disadvantages, and little bit differences. Okay, so how does NoSQL differ from SQL? Okay, after that, one of the example with NoSQL, one of the specific NoSQL database that we are going to deal with is MongoDB with Python. So we will first go through that what exactly the MongoDB, how, and the concepts and the features of MongoDB. Okay, later on we will explore about little bit detailed features like collections, documents, and CRUD operations like create, read, update, delete operations, okay, with the MongoDB. Then again we will explain, or we will go through that how this MongoDB can be handled or connected through the Python. Okay, so using Python, how we can communicate to this MongoDB. So this entire session is divided into three parts. First one is what the introduction to NoSQL, SQL, and the difference between the NoSQL, various data types, various data bases available. That introduction part will be there in the first section. Second section will be discussing, second and third section rather than we will be discussing about the MongoDB. Okay, in first section how to install the MongoDB as well as some basic operations to be performed in the MongoDB. Okay, second part is that what just performing the CRUD operations with MongoDB, and then last part is that what using Python, how the same thing can be done. So all these things we will be discussing in next 4 sessions. So let's start with the example, what is NoSQL. Okay, so generally people used to say that NoSQL. Okay, NoSQL means it is not only SQL. Not only and no, there is a difference. Okay, so we know that what exactly the SQL, but okay, generally the people used to think this particular term NoSQL database, okay, typically use it to refer the term that any non-relational database. Okay, but actual NoSQL stands for what? Not only SQL. Okay, where data may not be stored in the tabular form, which is there in the regular SQL databases. Okay, another thing, stores the data in different manner, different fashion, or may say different way than that of the relational tables. So in SQL there is a standard structure, fixed structure using which we can store the data, but in NoSQL databases there is no any standard or fixed structure is given. So not only SQL, of course it supports the structure, but the we may say that the flexibility is provided with the structure of the database. Okay, so generally common misconception is that what NoSQL databases or the non-relational databases don't store the relationship between data well. Okay, no database can store the relationship data. They just store it differently than the relational databases do. Okay, means how the relational database stores the data relationship. Instead of that, NoSQL also stores the relationship, but in the different way. Okay, it is not exactly same as that of how the SQL stores. Okay, of course, NoSQL database, NoSQL data models allows the related data to be nested within the single data structure. Okay, so related data to be nested within the single data structure. Okay, so generally what happens, structure within a structure, this concept is given, or this concept can be using NoSQL. Okay, so NoSQL database just come up from late 2000, and we know that the cost of the storage. Okay, so why NoSQL comes or became popular? Okay, even though NoSQL doesn't bother about how much data or how much space required to store data. Before that, we were very much conscious about storage. Okay, the size. Why? Because the size of memory, because the cost of the memory, okay, was very high before 2000. Later on, we come to know that how the cost of the memory became very cheaper. Then related to the performance. Okay, related to the performance, where instead of say complex and difficult to manage the data models. Okay, so reducing the data duplication was not the concern. Okay, afterwards, because of the space is available and very much cheaper in that way. So generally what developer used to thought that while software development, okay, NoSQL database optimized for the productivity. So what I am saying, that productivity means what? Very much conscious about that, what, how flexible data can be stored and how easily it can be queried. Easily it can be queried rather than forming the complex queries and then retrieving the data, okay, which may take time, or maybe data is stored in multiple relations and then joining these data together and then retrieving that data back. Okay, that becomes very cumbersome for all the developers. Okay, so with NoSQL, that became entire thing become very much easier one. In this, say, as the storage cost rapidly decreased, the amount of data applications needed to store and query gets increased. Okay, why? The data came in all the shapes and the sizes. Now what I say, that all the shapes and sizes, earlier we have to prepare the format, and only in that format, only in that shape we have to store the data, okay, which we used to call as the structured. But nowadays the data comes in the form of structured as well as semi-structured, or maybe the polymorphic data. Okay, and defining the schema in advance, okay, become nearly impossible, because we may not able to predict that what kind of data, in what format the data will come to us. Okay, so how to deal with this? So NoSQL database allows the developer to store the huge amount of unstructured data. Remember that, unstructured data, there is no any fixed kind of format, fixed kind of schema. Okay, so this kind of data NoSQL allows us to store. Okay, and of course lot of flexibility is given. Then additionally the agile manifesto was say rising in popularity. Okay, and the software engineers were rethinking the way they developed the software. Okay, they were recognizing the need to rapidly adapt the changing requirements. Okay, they needed, simply the developers needed the ability to iterate quickly and make the changes throughout the software stack. Okay, so NoSQL database gave them this kind of flexibility. Of course, cloud computing concepts also rose in popularity in the developers. Began just using the public clouds to host their applications and the data. Okay, and they wanted the ability to distribute the data across the multiple servers. Okay, and maybe different regions too. So the scale out facility, okay, later on just I will explain what exactly the concept of scale out. Okay, so here the last line provides, say, they provide flexible schemas and scale easily in the large amount of data. So in general way, scale up and scale out, these are the two concepts. Okay, previously SQL uses scale up concept. Scale up means what? As many as number of rows we can keep on adding in our database. Okay, so vertically we are continuously increasing the size of the table or size of the database. That was what scale up. But the structure or the schema designed for that particular database is fixed. So instead of scale out means what? I can expand the data. I can keep on adding the number of columns too. Okay, as and when required. That concept is called the scale out. Okay, so this is what simple introduction about the NoSQL. Now, I think I need not to explain all these things, what exactly SQL all of you came from the background where most probably, preferably SQL is used. Preferably SQL is used. Okay, so what does SQL stands for? Because as we have to compare, it's mandatory or it's necessary for me to explain both the things, SQL as well as NoSQL. Okay, so here simple one, SQL is what? The standard language for dealing with the relational databases. Okay, of course SQL can be used to insert, search, update, delete, okay, the database as well as the records. Then SQL can do a lot of other operations including say optimization, then maintenance of the database and so on. Okay, so generally what is SQL used for? First part is what? It helps the user to access the data, access the data in the RDBMS system. Of course, it helps to describe the data. That means in which format, in which way we can define, we can store our data. So we can define the structure of the data. Okay, of course, it allows you to define the data in the database and manipulate the data. Okay, maybe selective or maybe all. Okay, of course, with the help of SQL, we can create, drop, means defining the data as well as defining the structure of tables, views, synonyms, so many different types of concepts might be you heard about with the SQL. Okay, of course we also can prepare the functions, procedures, triggers, all these concepts are also there with the SQL. And moreover, SQL also allows you to grant, revoke or set the permissions to access the data or maybe access the database. Okay, so some privileges or roles can be assigned or can be given to the user with the help of grant, and we can take back the permissions with the help of revoke. So all these kind of activities we can perform with the help of SQL. Okay, because say NoSQL and SQL. So what do we do with SQL and what do we do with NoSQL? So in detail we are going to learn about the NoSQL. Okay, but we must know what exactly the concept of SQL to, because we are comparing every term with respect to NoSQL is against as that of your in SQL. So this is the end of the introduction to SQL and NoSQL part 1. See you in next session. Thank you.